I bought the server the way I buy most things lately, with a tight chest and a spreadsheet open on my phone. I'm 45, live outside Indianapolis, and I've spent my adult life being the responsible one. I don't chase trends. I don't gamble. I don't carry credit card balances unless something breaks that month. My wife, Erin, used to tease me for keeping a running list of household expenses like I was balancing a checkbook in 1998. Then the bills started coming faster than the paychecks. My job in logistics cut overtime, which was quietly half my cushion. Erin's student loan payment jumped when a temporary reduction ended. Our son, Caleb, started college and swore he'd cover most of it. But most turns into dad. Can you spot me in 100 little ways? Meanwhile, our roof decided to start leaking with the first heavy rain of the fall. I refurbish old enterprise hardware on weekends, servers, storage arrays, network gear. Small businesses upgrade or close, and the equipment ends up at liquidation auctions. It's not glamorous, but it's been steady enough to feel like a safety net. That's why I bid on a pallet from a defunct marketing firm. The listing was vague. Assorted rack equipment AS is, but the photos showed rails in decent shape, and I recognized the kind of asset tags that come from a place that didn't treat everything like disposable junk. I paid $2,100, more than I should have, and told myself I was investing in stability. When the freight driver dropped it in my garage, the metal smelled like dust and old air conditioning. I pulled the first server onto my bench and popped the front bezel off. 8 drive bays, all full. Drives don't usually survive liquidation. They're the one thing companies remember to remove. Drives are liability. Drives are secrets. I should have yanked them, wiped them, and never looked back. Instead, I told myself I'd just test the hardware first. That was the first time I used responsibility as a disguise for curiosity. It booted clean. Fans whined like a jet engine, LEDs flickered, and the RAID controller recognized the array without complaint. I expected an old Windows server install, maybe a Linux distro. Instead, a black menu appeared with a single option, BL Proto Launch. My first thought was Brightline Media, the name on the asset tags. My second thought was prototype, and the way my stomach tightened as soon as I said the word in my head. Prototype implies value. Value implies attention. Attention implies trouble. I hovered the mouse over the option like I was deciding whether to open a door I'd been told not to touch. I clicked. A plain login screen came up, Brightline Internal. There was also a button in the corner, Demo Mode. I hit Demo Mode and a clean interface loaded, white background, simple icons, a vertical feed of short videos. The way it scrolled, smooth, snapping each clip into place, felt so familiar it made my skin prickle. I watched a test video of a dog chasing a ball, then swiped, and another clip loaded instantly. Comments slid up from the bottom. A share icon sat where I expected it. It looked like the ancestor of an app that's everywhere now. The one Aaron scrolls through on the couch at night. The one our son claims he only uses for news, and then loses an hour to. Only this one had tabs I didn't recognize. Tip Creator. Local Events. At Target Preview. In the About panel, a date stamped itself into my memory. March 2013. The modern app didn't go public until years after that. I shut the server down like it had burned me. The garage felt suddenly too quiet, like the air was holding its breath. I went inside, washed my hands longer than necessary, and tried to act normal while Erin sorted the mail. The loan payment hits Friday, she said without looking up. I'm moving money around again. I nodded, calm on the outside, while something in me started calculating how many problems a prototype might solve. The next day, I mounted the drives read-only on my workstation. That was my compromise with myself. I wouldn't change anything, just look. Like looking didn't count. The file system was organized, almost meticulous. Folders named investor_deck, builds, pitch_video, legal, monetization, ad_model. It wasn't random office clutter. It was a product workspace. The pitch video made it real. A screen recording of the app, called Blink, running smoothly, with narration about creator earnings and micro tips and local engagement loops. It was the same idea as the modern app, but in a cleaner, almost optimistic form, like someone believed the internet could be built without turning people into data. The investor deck had charts and projections and an exit path slide listing potential acquirers. One name on that list later became the owner of the Modern App's parent platform. That wasn't speculation. It was there in a PDF created in 2013, like someone had predicted a future and then watched it happen. In the legal folder, I found a dispute memo. Names were partially redacted, but one kept appearing in margins and email signatures. Mara H. The memo referenced an equity agreement that had not been honored, and a settlement reserve that was insufficient given contributions. Money, ownership, betrayal, words that made my pulse pick up. I wasn't just looking at code. I was looking at a wound. I sat there with my palms flat on the desk and felt a strange mix of guilt and excitement. Guilt because I knew I had no right to any of this. Excitement because my life had been shrinking into bills and small compromises. And here was something enormous, sitting in my garage, humming quietly like a vault. I told myself I'd wipe the drives after I confirmed the hardware worked. That night, I didn't wipe anything. I opened the folder again and searched for acquisition. I called Danny because I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. Danny and I went to community college together. He's the guy who always has a hustle, always knows a guy, always thinks the world is a game you win by being willing to do what other people won't. He's not violent, not reckless in the dramatic sense, but he treats ethics like a speed limit. Optional if you don't get caught. He showed up with a grin and a coffee he didn't offer me. I played the pitch video. His grin fell into a stunned, hungry silence. That's basically it, he said. I know. He scrolled through folders like he already owned the contents. Source code, legal docs, investor deck. He looked at me. Do you have any idea what people pay for this kind of thing? People like lawyers, I said. He laughed. People like buyers, journalists, competitors, investors who missed the early train and want to know who built the tracks. I felt my shoulders tighten. Or the company that owns it now comes after me. Danny leaned back on the workbench, comfortable in my discomfort. You bought it legally. You didn't steal anything. That doesn't mean they'll care. He shrugged. Everything's negotiable, especially if money's involved. It was the first time he said it out loud like a rule of nature, and I hated how true it sounded. Before he left, he told me not to wipe anything. Let me make a couple calls, he said, just to see what it's worth. I should have told him no. I should have pulled the drives and wiped them that night, while I still felt like myself. Instead, I let someone else into the secret, and secrets grow teeth when they're shared. Danny's couple calls took a week of vague messages. Working on it. Talking to someone. Don't stress. Meanwhile, real life kept pressing in. Aaron clipped coupons again. Caleb called to say his campus job cut hours and rent was going up. My manager asked me to document my processes for continuity, which is corporate code for, we might not need you. I started waking up at 3 a.m. and doing math in my head. How many months could we last if I got laid off? How much would the roof repair cost if it got worse? How much longer could we pretend we were fine? Then Danny texted he found a buyer. Not a name, not a company. Just a buyer. He wanted proof. Screenshots. A sample. I told myself I'd keep it minimal. I took screenshots of the About panel with the 2013 date, the investor deck's title slide, the exit path slide. I cropped out what I could. Danny insisted on sending them from his phone, not mine. To keep you clean. An hour later, Danny forwarded a reply from an encrypted chat app. One line. If authentic, mid-six figures. Mid-six figures doesn't sound real until you say it slowly and let it land in your checking account. It doesn't just pay bills. It erases whole categories of fear. Erin walked into the garage while I was staring at the message. She watched my face for a moment and said, "You're doing that thing." "What thing?" "The thing where you look like you're about to make a decision and you don't want to tell me." I lied gently. "Just thinking about work." She didn't argue. She just nodded, tired, and went back inside. That was denial again. Mine and hers, layered together like insulation. The buyer's voice call felt too professional to be criminal. He introduced himself as Holloway and spoke like someone who spent years making dangerous things sound reasonable. He asked how I acquired the hardware. He asked about documentation. He asked whether I'd distributed anything. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. If this predates the public launch, it has litigation value. Settlement leverage. Narrative leverage. So you're buying it for a lawsuit? I said. Sometimes the lawsuit never happens, he replied. Sometimes the threat is enough. Danny watched me like he was watching a fish take the bait. Holloway offered an amount that made my throat tighten. Enough to clear Aaron's loans, fix the roof, pay Caleb's tuition, rebuild savings, maybe even let me breathe in a way I hadn't in years. He laid out an escrow process, verification, partial payment, delivery. When the call ended, Danny was smiling like he already had the money in his hand. I felt sick and euphoric at the same time. Guilt mixed with relief, like my conscience was an inconvenience I could finally afford to ignore. That night I dug deeper, looking for anything that proved authenticity. In a folder called cap_table, I found a spreadsheet labeled cap_table_history. It showed equity splits, early investors, a settlement reserve for Mara's dispute. Next to Mara's name was an estimated payout, tens of thousands. Then I found a scanned letter, Mara H. Buyout declined. The signature at the bottom wasn't Mara's. It was Aaron's father's name. Same spelling. Same flourish I'd seen on Christmas card checks. I stared at it until the letters blurred. My brain tried to find a harmless explanation. Coincidence. Different person. Same name. But the letter listed an address in a small Illinois town, Aaron's hometown. The server hadn't just brought money into my garage. It brought my family into the story. I didn't confront Aaron immediately. I carried the knowledge around for 2 days like a stone in my pocket. Heavy, always there, impossible to ignore. When I finally asked, I tried to sound casual. Did your dad ever work with a company called Brightline Media? Aaron froze just long enough to answer wrong. Not that I know of. And Mara H? I asked, watching her face. Her eyes narrowed. Where is this coming from? I told her I'd found documents on the drives. I watched the color drain from her face as I said Mara's name again. Why do you have those drives? She whispered. I explained the auction, the prototype, the buyer. I left out Danny's part at first, then admitted it when she asked. The more I spoke, the smaller I felt. Like every word was evidence of how far I'd wandered from the careful person I claimed to be. Aaron sat down hard at the kitchen table. My dad. He consulted for a startup, she said slowly. Years ago, before we met. Was it this one? She didn't answer. That was the answer. When she finally spoke, it wasn't anger. It was fear. He didn't consult, she said. He invested. A lot. He thought it was his retirement. He told me not to worry about it. And Mara? I asked. Aaron looked down at her hands. Mara was the person who built it, she said. Or at least a big part of it. Dad said she was difficult, that she wanted more than she deserved. Her voice had that inherited certainty people get when they repeat family stories. So your dad signed a letter declining her buyout, I said. Aaron flinched. I didn't know that part. There it was. The first major twist that recontextualized everything. I'd been thinking I stumbled into a corporate relic. Instead, I'd stumbled into something tied to my own family, and maybe to the money problems that had haunted our marriage like weather. Aaron looked at me and asked, very quietly, how much is it worth? Not is it right. Not should we wipe it? Just worth. Money doesn't always make you greedy. Sometimes it just reveals what desperation already wrote in you. We fought, but not in a loud, theatrical way. We fought like adults who have learned to keep their voices down so the neighbors don't hear and the kid doesn't get dragged into it. Tense sentences. Long silences. Sleepless nights. Aaron wanted me to return the drives to the company. You tell them you found it, she said. You ask for a reward. You get a lawyer. Danny said the company would bury us. You show up with that and they'll say you hacked it, he insisted. They'll scare you into handing it over for free. I tried to find the clean path that also paid. That's the lie people tell themselves when they're already in the mud. I copied the repositories onto an encrypted drive for organization. I justified it as preparing for either outcome, return or sale. I told Aaron I wasn't selling anything yet. Then the second twist hit harder. Aaron's father called. He never calls me directly. It's always Aaron. But that night my phone rang and his name was on the screen. His voice was polite, almost warm. "I hear you got some equipment from a liquidation," he said. My stomach dropped. Aaron hadn't told him. She swore she hadn't, which meant he knew some other way. "How did you hear that?" I asked. He chuckled softly. "Small worlds. I still know people. Listen, I'm going to be blunt. Whatever you found, it's not yours. Those drives were supposed to be destroyed." There was no anger in his tone, just certainty, like he was explaining gravity. "You can't ask me to ignore it," I said, trying to sound firm. "I'm not asking," he replied. Then he added, "We can help you. There's a way to handle this so nobody gets hurt." Not him. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Erin stared at me across the kitchen like she was watching a dam crack. Her father knew, and if he knew, someone else did too. The third twist came in the form of a letter, but it didn't arrive by mail. It arrived by email, sent to my work account with my full name in the subject line. I opened it in a cold sweat. It was from a law firm I recognized from local commercials, the kind that does business litigation, not DUIs. The email referenced unauthorized possession of proprietary materials and demanded immediate contact. They knew my employer. They knew where I worked. They'd chosen that channel on purpose to scare me. Danny's response was immediate. "Do not talk to them. You talk to Holloway. We need to move faster." Aaron's response was the opposite. "You're done. You wipe everything. You give it back." I sat at my desk at work, staring at the email, feeling shame creep up my neck like heat. I'd always been careful. I'd always followed rules. And now I was one email away from losing my job, my reputation, my marriage, maybe more. That night I called Holloway and told him we needed to accelerate. He didn't sound surprised. "Pressure is expected," he said. "But you need to decide. If you hand it over to them, you get nothing. If you deliver to us, you get paid, but you accept risk." "Can you protect me?" I asked. "I can reduce exposure," he said. "I can't erase it." Aaron stood in the doorway listening, arms crossed, face tight. When I ended the call, she said, "You're choosing money over us." I wanted to deny it. I wanted to tell her I was choosing security, choosing survival, choosing the future. But when I tried to speak, nothing honest sounded good. We made a plan that felt like a plan because it involved steps. We'd deliver a package to Holloway through a drop service he used, no face-to-face, just a locker system with a code. In return, he'd release the first payment through an escrow app that claimed to operate offshore. Danny assured me it was normal. Aaron refused to be involved, but she didn't stop me either, which I interpreted as permission because I needed to. On the morning of the drop, I drove with the encrypted drive in my jacket pocket and my heart pounding hard enough to make me nauseous. The sky was low and gray. Every car behind me felt like a tail. Every stoplight felt like a trap. I parked at the strip mall where the lockers were, one of those places that looks identical in every suburb. Nail salon, vape shop, dollar store, a gym with tinted windows. I walked to the lockers with my hands trembling, typed the code, and slid the package inside. For a moment, I felt a rush of relief, like I'd done it, like the worst part was over, like I could go home and start planning repairs and paying down debt and breathing. That was the false resolution, the calm before the real collapse. Because 2 hours later, instead of a payment notification, I got a text from Danny. "We have a problem." Danny showed up at my house looking pale. "Holloway's gone," he said. "What do you mean gone?" "The account's gone. The chat's gone. The escrow link doesn't work," he said, voice rising. "I think we got played." My first reaction was anger, hot and immediate, but it wasn't clean anger. It was shame in disguise. Because getting played meant I'd been greedy and stupid, and greed and stupidity are harder to admit than wrongdoing. Erin's face didn't change much when I told her. She just looked tired, like the universe had confirmed what she already knew. You put us at risk for nothing, she said. I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. There wasn't a defense that didn't sound pathetic. That evening, the fourth twist arrived. A knock on my garage side door. Two men in plain clothes. Polite smiles. They didn't flash badges, which somehow made it worse. One introduced himself as a representative of the company that owned the modern app. He said my name like he was reading it off a file. We understand you recently acquired some hardware, he said. We'd like to resolve this amicably. I tried to keep my voice steady. I bought it at auction. Of course, he said. And you likely didn't realize what it contained. I wanted to believe that's what they assumed. Then he added, we also understand you attempted to distribute materials. That complicates things. My throat went dry. How do you know that? He smiled again. We know more than you think. Behind him, in the driveway, I saw a car I didn't recognize. And behind that, at the curb, another. Erin stood in the hallway watching, her hand pressed to her mouth. The representative said, we can do this the hard way or the easy way. The easy way is you tell us where the copy is and you sign an agreement. He didn't mention money. He didn't have to. Money wasn't leverage now. Fear was. I told them I didn't have it, that I'd wiped everything, that I'd just looked. They didn't argue. They didn't threaten. They just handed me a card and said they'd be in touch. Then they left as calmly as they'd arrived. When the door closed, my legs went weak. I sat on the garage floor with the cold concrete pressing through my jeans and felt like I'd finally reached the consequence I'd been outrunning. Erin didn't yell. That was almost worse. She stood over me and said, I can't live like this. I tried to promise it was over. I tried to say we'd fix it. I tried to sound like the careful man again. She shook her head. You weren't careful, she said. You were desperate, and you let that make you reckless. I wanted to point out her father's involvement, the letters, the hidden investment. I wanted to shift blame because blame feels lighter when you can hand it off. Instead, I asked, did you know? Erin's eyes flicked away. That tiny movement was an answer. I knew Dad lost money, she said. I didn't know the details. He always said it would come back around. He always said it was complicated. Did he ever help us? I asked, and my voice cracked on the question. All those times we were tight, did he ever give you money from it? Erin's silence stretched. Then she said, he paid my loans for a year. Quietly. He told me not to tell you because you'd be proud. The words hit like a punch. That was why the autopay failed. Why Erin's payment suddenly jumped. It hadn't jumped. The hidden help had ended. The whole year of me thinking I was managing, controlling, being responsible. Someone else had been propping us up. Money disguised as love. Manipulation disguised as pride protection. I laughed once, a small ugly sound, and then I couldn't stop my eyes from watering. The law firm followed up with a formal demand letter, this time to our home address. It listed dates, references, and a good faith opportunity to avoid escalation if we cooperated. They wanted the drives. They wanted assurances no copies existed. They wanted silence. Danny stopped answering my calls. His number went straight to voicemail, then stopped connecting altogether. Either he'd run, or he'd been scared into disappearing. I couldn't blame him without also blaming myself. Erin's father called again, this time not polite. You're going to ruin everything, he hissed. Everything? I asked. Your retirement plan? You don't understand, he said. You never did. That's when the final recontextualization clicked into place. Erin's father hadn't just been an investor. He'd been part of the early fight over ownership. He'd signed letters, made threats, maybe helped push Mar out. And then the modern app had exploded, and the people who benefited had rewritten history. The drives weren't an accident. They were a loose end that should have been destroyed, and somehow they ended up in liquidation instead. Someone had slipped, and now the machine was correcting. I hired a lawyer we couldn't afford. He advised compliance. They have more resources than you, he said. And from what you've described, you're exposed. I wanted to rage against the unfairness. I wanted to scream that I didn't ask for any of this. But I'd clicked demo mode. I called Danny. I'd listened to Holloway. I'd chosen. Choice has a way of showing up late like a bill you forgot about. We turned over the physical drives. Under supervision, my lawyer watched as their team imaged them and then wiped them. They asked about copies. I lied at first, then admitted I'd made one encrypted drive. My lawyer shot me a look that felt like betrayal in its own right. They demanded it. I handed it over. I watched it leave my hands and felt something like grief, not because I missed the money, but because I was watching the last illusion of control disappear. They presented a non-disclosure agreement and a settlement offer. No criminal referral, no public action, no lawsuit, in exchange for compliance and silence. No payment, just the privilege of not being crushed. I signed. At home, Aaron and I moved around each other like strangers in a shared rental. We didn't explode. We didn't throw things. We just stopped being tender. It's amazing how quiet a marriage can get when trust drains out of it. Caleb came home for a weekend and asked why we seemed off. Aaron said work stress. I stared at my plate and felt the shame settle deeper, because now I was lying to my son the way Aaron had lied to me, and the pattern felt hereditary. A month later, my company eliminated my position. The timing may have been coincidence, but it didn't feel like one. My manager avoided my eyes when he handed me the packet. The careful man in me would have seen that coming. The man I'd become just nodded and carried the box to my car. I think about Mara sometimes, the name in the margins, the person who built something the world chewed up and renamed. I tried to look her up once, late at night, but I stopped before I hit search because I didn't know what I was hoping to find. Vindication? Someone else to blame? Proof that the money I almost touched belonged to someone who deserved it more than I did. Erin moved into the spare room in January. She didn't say separation. She didn't say divorce. She just started sleeping behind a closed door, and we both acted like the word wasn't necessary. Her father stopped calling. That's supposed to feel like peace, but it doesn't. It feels like you've been cut loose from a rope you didn't realize was holding you up. I got another job eventually, lower pay, longer commute. I still refurbish hardware on weekends, but now every time I open a chassis I feel my stomach tighten, like I'm expecting another secret to be staring back at me. I wipe drives immediately. I don't look. I don't even let myself wonder. Sometimes, when the house is quiet and the bills are stacked on the counter and Erin's door is closed, I stand in the garage and listen to the hum of electronics and think about how close I came to a different life. Not a better one, just a different one. I used to believe the worst thing money could do was run out. Now I know money can show up like a promise, and you'll reach for it with both hands, and you won't notice what it's doing to you until you're already holding nothing but fear.